June 30th, 2023, Friday. At 10:50 a.m., a woman named Joanne Gadana called the local social services department in the UK. She anxiously expressed that her friend had a 2-year-old girl, and she was now very worried about the child's personal safety. She hoped the social services department could quickly send someone to check. The report call and initial details. After explaining for a while on the phone, the social services department finally understood the ins and outs of the matter. This morning, Joanne received a message from her friend Chelsea on Facebook. In the message, Chelsea unexpectedly said that her 2-year-old daughter, Isabella, had been dead for 3 days. Joanne was startled and quickly asked Chelsea what had happened. Chelsea vaguely said that her daughter Isabella had passed away in her sleep. Joanne initially thought the child was sick or had an accident, but as they chatted, the Chelsea on the other end revealed an even more disturbing message. She said her daughter's body was still sitting in her stroller, and that stroller had been pushed into the bathroom by her and her boyfriend. Moreover, Isabella's body was already starting to smell. After reading the message, Joanne's mind buzzed. She couldn't believe her friend's words at all, couldn't believe something like this could happen. After calming down, Joanne urged Chelsea to call the police right away, but the other party replied, "I can't call the police because Bella has bruises on her body. If I call, I'm done for." Realizing her friend wasn't joking, Joanne immediately called the social services department. After hanging up, still uneasy, at 11:07 a.m., Joanne followed up by calling the 999 emergency police line. When questioned by the officer, Joanne said she had met the child's mother, Chelsea, 2 years ago in July 2021. At that time, Chelsea was dating her boyfriend, Thomas, and the two were raising their daughter, Isabella, together. After that, she stayed in touch with Chelsea, considering her a close friend. By May 2023, Chelsea suddenly told Joanne that she had broken up with Thomas and was now with her new boyfriend, Scott. She also said she urgently needed money because they had taken their 2-year-old daughter, Isabella, and moved out of town, leaving them homeless. To help her friend, even though Joanne's life was already quite difficult, she still scraped together £60 and gave it to Chelsea to tide her over. But just a month later, this morning on Facebook, she received Chelsea's message saying her daughter had passed away. What made Joanne even more chilled was that Chelsea repeatedly messaged on Facebook that she couldn't call the police because her daughter had bruises all over her body. Even toward the end of the conversation, Chelsea specifically reminded Joanne to delete the chat history and wrote, "I feel like we can only bury it. Hopefully no one finds her." Isabella's short life. Isabella Jonas Wheildon was born on September 22, 2020, in the small town of Biggleswade, UK, located about 40 miles north of London. With a population of around 20,000, Isabella was a lively and adorable little girl, full of curiosity about everything. She loved going to the park, loved going to the playground, loved watching Peppa Pig cartoons. Any toy related to Peppa Pig she couldn't put down. Isabella's mother, Chelsea Gleason-Mitchell, was a server at a local bar. In 2019, while working at the bar, she met Scott Jeff, who also worked there. Scott and Chelsea were the same age. At the time, both were 19 years old. However, this romance was not approved by Chelsea's mother because she discovered that her daughter had started using banned substances after getting involved with Scott. After investigating, Chelsea's mom was shocked to find that although Scott looked decent on the outside, he was addicted to all kinds of vices, from painkillers to meth, ecstasy and cocaine, anything that could get him high, he was hooked. Under her mother's firm and strong intervention, Chelsea and Scott broke up after a few months of passionate romance. But in the same month they broke up, December 2019, Chelsea quickly met a new boyfriend, Thomas Wheildon. Thomas was a young painter and was also learning interior decoration. After dating Thomas, Chelsea got pregnant at lightning speed. 9 months later, on September 22, 2020, the adorable Isabella Wheildon was born. As parents, Chelsea and Thomas doted on her very much. They often took her to the park and amusement park together, taking good care of the little girl. Meanwhile, Chelsea quit her bar job and started working as a teaching assistant at a local kindergarten. Just a month after the breakup, on May 21, 2023, Chelsea quickly got back together with her old flame, Scott. Guess what? Did Chelsea really like Scott as a person, or did she like the feeling of doing drugs with him? And Scott, this super drug king, seemed to like Isabella on the surface because he thought she looked like him. He even paranoidly believed that Isabella was his flesh and blood, not Thomas's. His reason was that Chelsea got pregnant in the same month they broke up, so it was indeed possible in theory. But in reality, the child wasn't his.
Chelsea knew her mom hated Scott and would never agree to them being together. So for the sake of their eternal love and to carefree get high with the drug king, I guess, Chelsea secretly quit her kindergarten job. Then on June 1, 2023, she took the train from her hometown Biggleswade with Scott to Great Yarmouth. So they rekindled on May 21, and just 9 days later, they ran away together. This spade was fast enough.
Unstable life in Great Yarmouth. Upon arriving in Great Yarmouth, they temporarily stayed at the local Nelson Hotel. Chelsea really liked it there because the place was by the sea, and Isabella loved playing near the beach, so they considered moving there permanently. But the problem was that the two young people had hardly any savings. Forget buying a house, they couldn't even afford to rent. If there was a way to solve the housing issue, it was to live in government-provided, free, public housing. But free stuff is wanted by everyone. It's not that easy to get. Government-free public housing has always been hard to apply for. The queue is extremely long. Typically, it takes at least 6 months to a year. Statistics show that even over 12% of people have waited more than 5 years. To get the government's free public housing, Chelsea lied to the government, saying Isabella was born to her and Scott. They had no money to marry or rent a house, and she claimed to be a victim of domestic violence, saying her ex-boyfriend Thomas had been harassing her and her daughter. For the child's safety, she needed to find a safe place quickly. The Great Yarmouth City Dermot rejected Chelsea's application, reasoning that her home in Biggleswade was under Bedfordshire jurisdiction, so she should apply to the local government in Bedfordshire. However, considering Chelsea was with a child only 2 years old, the Great Yarmouth government made a compromise and was willing to provide temporary housing for the mother and child. But Scott, as her boyfriend, was not eligible to stay. As soon as she heard her sweetheart couldn't join, Chelsea immediately rejected the Great Yarmouth City government's offer and instead submitted the application back to her hometown Bedfordshire. Considering Isabella's situation, after receiving the application, the Bedfordshire County government put them on the priority list. But priority doesn't mean immediate approval. It still requires waiting for a period. During the wait, the group moved to the Seaside Holiday Park, Kessingland on Sea Holiday Park. Here, they rented a cheap caravan for 4 nights. During their stay at the holiday park, surveillance captured multiple times Chelsea and Scott going out together to smoke and drink, while Isabella did not appear at the same time. Moreover, the two would be out for several hours, just locking the 2-year-old child alone in the room. Later in court, Chelsea confessed that the first time she left, she was still uneasy about the child, but Scott kept persuading her that the child would be fine alone. After several consecutive outings, Chelsea also got used to leaving the child alone at home. Abuse begins. By June 9th, Chelsea and Scott could no longer afford the caravan park. With no money for accommodation, they chose to go to the St. George Hotel, which provides temporary free lodging for some homeless families. Later, the hotel front desk receptionist testified that while staying at this hotel, Scott often smoked marijuana on the steps outside the hotel. Moreover, Chelsea and Scott often went out together without Isabella present. It's guessed that they left the child alone in the room again. A 14-year-old boy staying at the hotel with his mother once went to Scott and Chelsea's room. At the time, this 14-year-old boy wanted to buy marijuana from Scott to smoke. As soon as he entered the room, the boy saw Scott kicking the Isabella's stroller several times and opening his palm to slap Isabella directly in the face, making her cry. Later in court, Chelsea admitted that when they were staying at the St. George Hotel, Scott started becoming more irritable. He had no money to buy banned substances, and even cheap marijuana was almost unaffordable. Plus, little Isabella occasionally peed on herself when going to the bathroom, soiling her clothes. This made Scott, who was responsible for teaching her, very angry. At first, he would forcefully hit Isabella's little hands. When the child cried and called for mom, he insisted on not letting Isabella go to her and insisted that Isabella stay with him, the father. Although the hotel was free, Chelsea and Scott only stayed for 3 nights. Not because they didn't want to stay, but because several times at night, people came knocking on their door. The reason was that the crying from Isabella in the room was particularly loud and lasted a long time. The last knock happened at 2 a.m. A female resident in the hotel, after hearing Isabella's prolonged crying, knocked on the door. The one who opened the door was Chelsea. This female resident didn't enter the room, but from outside the door, she could see Scott inside taking a towel and whipping it hard against the wall, as if venting dissatisfaction. The woman then asked if everything was okay with Scott. Scott angrily shouted no, saying everything was going wrong that night. With guilty consciences, Scott and Chelsea perhaps worried that the child's cries would alert the police, or that the bruises on Isabella would be discovered by others. So the two chose to move again. They were like gorillas, hitting one place and changing to another. This time, they went to the nearby beach, Kessingland Sea. This beach was only a 10-minute drive from their last hotel. It was very close and there was a public restroom nearby. I don't know if they could shower there. Anyway, on this beach, Scott and Chelsea set up a simple tent, squeezing in this temporary shelter with the 2-year-old Isabella. It's worth noting that when Chelsea and her family of 3 went to the beach, it was June, right in the middle of the UK summer. Anyone who's been to the beach would find their attire very out of place. At the beach, in the height of summer, everyone was in swimsuits and shorts. But this family, especially Isabella, was dressed in long sleeves and long pants, wrapped in a thick jacket, looking like they just came from the Antarctic. So many people at the beach, upon discovering this little girl living crammed in a narrow tent with her family, called the police, hoping officers could come check. After receiving multiple reports in succession, on June 16, 2023, at 1:32 p.m., the police finally found their tent at the beach. From afar, seeing Isabella, the female officer began persuading Chelsea to leave the beach, saying she could help the family find a safer place to stay. I understand you might be homeless. Yeah, she'll punt her. No, he's at the pub charging his finally are the old hall. Yeah. From the map, the nearest pub is this Lookout Bistro. It's a short walk, about 1 minute away. If he was in a hurry to charge, he would definitely go there. But actually, Scott went to the Old Hall pub, which requires crossing several blocks, at least 12 minutes. So was Scott really going to charge his phone? Later, the Old Hall pub staff testified that Scott lied to everyone, saying he was a victim of domestic violence with no place to stay and no food. The soft-hearted pub staff gave him free food multiple times. One employee even gave Scott 20 pounds and let him use the staff shower room for free. Tell me, right, so first of all, I really need to know who you are, situation, what we can do to help, because it's not the best place in this heat for your little girl. No, is it? No? No. Are you okay? You are all fitting well? Yes. How long have you been down here? We've been here for 3 weeks. The police did not release all the body camera footage, but undoubtedly, Chelsea rejected the police's goodwill, refusing any help, including providing safe housing. From a legal standpoint, as Isabella's guardian, her mother Chelsea had the right to refuse help. However, to be safe, the police still forwarded the family situation to the Welfare Department and Child Protection Agency, asking the relevant departments to arrange housing for them as soon as possible. Perhaps living on the beach was too conspicuous. After the police left, Chelsea and the others went to a holiday park in Belton called Wild Duck. In this holiday park, Scott's violent behavior toward Isabella escalated further. Whenever she accidentally soiled herself while going to the bathroom, Scott would immediately run over and slap her face. Sometimes he even stomped her on the ground, kicking and punching her. That wasn't all. After beating the child when Isabella bathed, Scott only gave her cold water rinses, no hot water. Keep in mind, Isabella was only 2 years old. On the other hand, ironically, this family also celebrated Father's Day in the Wild Duck Holiday Park. June 18th, 2023 was Father's Day in the UK. Chelsea, this ultimate romantic, gave Scott 3 cans of beer plus a greeting card. The card said, "World's Best Father." I don't know how someone's skin can be so thick. Witnessing her own child being constantly slapped, punched, kicked, even stomped underfoot by this so-called father, a 2-year-old being repeatedly trampled. This mother could still say Scott was a good father. I can only say, what is a demon's brain thinking? How does it work? What is its logic? This is truly beyond my understanding. The day after Father's Day, June 19, 2023, Chelsea received a call from the welfare department saying they had prioritized them for free public housing. So from when Chelsea applied to approval, it took less than a month total, which was very fast. The public housing Chelsea was assigned was in Ipswich, located at Sidegate Lane, East Villa Apartments. This apartment building was originally a nursing home with 24 rooms. After poor management led to closure, the local government bought the place in 2018 and renovated it into 45 independent rooms of free public housing, specifically for vulnerable groups, especially families with children, as temporary housing. Since this free public housing was over an hour's drive from the Wild Duck Holiday Park, the group chose to take the train on June 19. From the train surveillance footage, it can be seen that in the height of summer, Isabella was wrapped up tightly from head to toe. Later, Chelsea testified in court that at the time, she put a hat and large sunglasses on her daughter and specially dressed her in a thick jacket. All of this was because Isabella was already covered in bruises, very obvious. To prevent others from seeing, she specially covered the child like that. On the night of check-in, around 11 p.m., the outdoor surveillance captured them smoking marijuana outside, leaving the child alone in the room. 4 days after moving in, June 23rd, surveillance again captured the two going out at 7:46 p.m., once again leaving Isabella alone in the house, returning after 15 minutes. By June 26, a week after moving in, at 4:55 p.m., a key detail was captured. Scott's right arm was injured and in a sling. Combined with Isabella's full body of injuries later, it's not hard to guess why this villain got hurt. From the close-up footage, we can also clearly see the tattoo on Scott's hand. His right hand was tattooed with pure and left with hell, so together it's pure hell. It seems he had a clear self-awareness. According to information released by the police later, evidence shows that on June 26 at 11:37 p.m., the 2-year and 9-month-old Isabella was abused to death. This time point was only a week after they just moved into the public housing, and only a short 36 days after the scumbag Scott entered her life. Discovery of the body. After receiving Joanne's police report on June 30th, 2023, at 1:07 p.m., the police arrived at Chelsea's public housing. The room they stayed in was 15A. Upon entering the crime scene, the apartment was empty. But through the bathroom door, the officers could already smell a foul odor. The bathroom door was locked. After forcing it open, the police discovered a stroller in the shower area, piled with several layers of clothes and blankets. After removing these items, what they feared most still happened. Isabella's body was covered under the blanket. Her whole body was cold. Although the body had begun to decompose, multiple bruises could still be clearly seen on her small face. The forensic examination found that Isabella had multiple soft tissue contusions on her head, neck, front chest, back, both arms, both legs, etc. Moreover, her genitals were torn, suspected to have suffered repeated beatings. In addition, both of Isabella's wrists were fractured, and the pelvis near her waist was fractured, suspected to be caused by kicking or stomping. If using 4 words to describe Isabella's injuries, it would be too horrific to look at. Later, residents near the public housing told reporters that they saw multiple officers and forensic personnel leaving the crime scene in tears. Besides the clothes and blankets on the stroller, the forensics also found at the scene a pair of leggings Isabella had worn before, a gray duvet cover, a towel from the baby bed, and adult-sized white jeans, a children's shorts, a bathrobe, and children's leggings. All the above items had bloodstains. Through DNA comparison, it was confirmed that all the blood was from Isabella. The question now is, Isabella passed away 3 days ago on June 26th, and the body was discovered on June 30th. Where had her so-called mother, Chelsea, and her fake father, the scumbag Scott, run off to? By checking the surveillance around the apartment, the police discovered that 10 minutes after Joanne called the police, at 11:18 a.m., Chelsea and Scott left the public housing together. They took the bus to the city center. There, they were captured on surveillance going shopping at a mall. They bought an Xbox charger at Sex. At noon, they went to McDonald's for fast food. In the afternoon, at 4:30, the two went to the pub. The Case is Altered on Woodbridge Road. After drinking a bit at 4:55 p.m., they boarded the train to Bury St. Edmunds. Look at how happily she smiles. In the morning, she just told her friend that her child had been dead for 3 days. A few hours later, she's laughing hysterically on the train. Truly. An hour and a half later, at 6:28, the two who got off the train came to the corn exchange. You can see Chelsea was in a really good mood. After dinner, the two started drinking, and this drink lasted 6 hours. During the high point of drinking, Scott picked up his phone and edited a photo of him and Isabella. He added RIP and a heart emoji on it. Then he used this edited picture as his phone wallpaper. During drinking, he also kept messaging his mom, Sandy. His mom urged her son to go to the police station and turn himself in. But Scott replied, "I can't go, Mom. A girl died and no one blames us. It's so hard." After rejecting his mother's request to surrender, Scott also took multiple photos of his lover Chelsea drinking. Can you imagine this is a mother who just lost her child? They say people who love to laugh usually have good luck. Sure enough, 2 hours after this photo was taken, she was lucky to be caught by the police. Around 1:30 a.m. on July 1, the two who had just drunk for 6 straight hours were wandering on the street and were caught red-handed by a large number of arriving police. "Don't move. Don't move. Okay, but I'm arrested you, okay? Due to the fact that Isabella, okay, just found alone and deceased at your home address, okay? So I'm resting on suspicion of murder. You don't have to say anything. Went by home defense, we don't mention. Went question something which you later will unequal anything to say may be given evidence necessity."
If you arrest us off feature, gather evidence, present loss evidence and interview you. Okay, my fate is in my hands, but can you put it back here? Like, take it off, sorry. Right, it's just a vape here. Yeah, it's just a vape. Okay, have you got anything else on me? I've just got my partner's wallet, that's it. But do you understand what you've been resting for? Okay, that's why I've come down here for the days off, and I'm just going to hand myself into what I've got, the state I was in, and I couldn't really deal with the police at that moment in time. I was really not in the right state. This is when I've had a voice for the lies.
After being arrested, Scott denied all charges brought by the police, including child abuse and murder. On Chelsea's side, she only denied the murder charge, but pleaded guilty to some lesser charges proposed by the police. These charges included causing or allowing the death of a child abuse related to cocaine, and child abuse related to marijuana. The trial and evidence. 1 year after the incident, in October 2024, the murder trial that had the attention of all of England finally began. In court, police officer Sally Hawes told the jury that Isabella was a healthy, cute little girl who was well cared for. But ever since Scott Jeff intruded into her young life, Isabella had been subjected to constantly escalating cruel abuse. This unfortunate experience was cold, brutal, and fatal. In court, the prosecutor called Professor Anthony Fremantle, an orthopedic pathologist from the University of Manchester. Professor Fremantle stated that the pelvic injury on Isabella occurred within 6 to 24 hours before her death. It was similar to being hit by a car at 40 kilometers per hour or being kicked directly in the waist by an adult horse. The severity of the trauma was the most serious skeletal injury he had encountered in children in his over 40 years of practice, bar none. In addition, Professor Fremantle also stated that besides the pelvic injury, Isabella's wrists were fractured again in the same time frame. The reason for saying again is that the bone evidence showed that Isabella's wrists were first fractured 8 to 14 days before her death. That is, before moving to the public housing, possibly even before Father's Day, little Isabella's wrists had already been beaten to fracture. Thinking of her doting mother actually having the heart to write a Father's Day card, it's truly disgusting to the extreme. Even more heartbreaking is that Isabella's cause of death was bone marrow embolism. Specifically, multiple fractures throughout her body allowed some of Isabella's bone marrow to seep into her blood and enter her lungs, causing an embolism, thereby reducing her breathing ability. This is an extremely painful and rare way to die, not to mention she was only a 2-year-old girl. The toxicology report even revealed traces of marijuana and cocaine in Isabella's body. Experts explained that these components in her body were not from Isabella actively taking banned substances, but similar to inhaling secondhand smoke in a smoking environment. Chelsea and Scott must have smoked marijuana and various banned substances countless times in front of the child, so the child could have such components in her body. In court, the prosecutor presented several videos found on Scott's phone. In one video, Scott shouted at the sleeping Isabella, startling the little girl awake. In another video, Scott made a gun shape with his hand, pointing at Isabella's head, scaring her into continuous crying. And even more disgusting are the third and fourth videos below. In the third video, Scott asked Isabella if her biological father had injured her like that. Isabella answered, yes. According to Chelsea's later testimony, Scott forced Isabella to say these words at the time. He knew Isabella was covered in injuries and would be discovered sooner or later, so he forced her to record a video lying. If Isabella didn't comply or answered incorrectly, Scott would beat her and rinse her with cold water. In the fourth video, Chelsea, Scott, and Isabella were sitting outside the government public housing office. During this, Scott seriously said to Isabella, "I'm going to stab you with a knife. Do you want Daddy to give you a knife?" Saying such things to a small child and recording it on video shows what kind of scumbag Scott is. On the other hand, although as the mother, Chelsea didn't lay a hand on the child or verbally stimulate Isabella, the video evidence found on Chelsea's phone by the police was equally chilling. There was a video recorded by Chelsea on June 22, which was 4 days before Isabella's death. In the video, you can see Isabella lying on her baby bed with black eyes. And as the mother, Chelsea clearly knew her child ordeal. 4 days later, on June 26th, the night of Isabella's death, Chelsea sent a message to another friend, Hannah Smith. She told Hannah, "My stress is so high, I feel like I can't take it." When her friend Hannah asked what was wrong, Chelsea only replied with 2 words: absolutely everything. Combined with Professor Fremantle's earlier testimony, the prosecutor believed that when Chelsea sent the message, her daughter Isabella had already suffered sustained attacks and was hanging by a thread. And Chelsea, as the mother, witnessed everything throughout. She didn't protect her daughter, didn't fight for her. Afterward, she didn't call an ambulance, didn't call the police. All she did was send a message to her friend to vent her emotions. In court, the defense presented an oral testimony from Chelsea's childhood friend, Bethany Birkinshaw. Ms. Birkinshaw works at a local mental hospital. She said she suspected Chelsea might have issues like intellectual developmental delay because in school earlier, Chelsea performed very slowly. She was a student who needed special care in learning. Sometimes when chatting with her, it felt like she was always absent-minded, hard to focus. Because Chelsea was different, she was bullied a lot in school. In the eyes of her childhood friend, Miss Birkinshaw, Chelsea was easily manipulated. But at the same time, she also said that Chelsea always really liked children, which is why she later chose to work at a kindergarten. In court, Chelsea's lawyer, Sasha, stated that before dating Scott, Chelsea had always taken very good care of her daughter and was a very dutiful mom. Isabella's medical records show that she fully participated in the healthcare system. Isabella received vaccinations, and no doctors raised any concerns about her health. Isabella was described as always a happy, healthy, energetic, and content child. Chelsea admitted that after meeting Scott, things completely changed. She said when Scott first saw Isabella, he was convinced she was his child. He felt that in the past 2+ years, he hadn't had the chance to contact his child, no chance to love her. So now he wanted to make up for it, to take on the father's responsibility. Thus, in the following time, Scott actively took on the role of a nanny dad. He would help Isabella get dressed, prepare milk for her, teach her how to use the toilet. It's just that the method was really too violent. He had no patience at all. As long as Isabella did something slightly not to his liking, he started roughing up the child. Chelsea said that at first she saw Scott forcefully hitting Isabella's left hand, then the right hand. Later, this violent discipline not only became routine, but escalated. And on the night of the incident, June 26th, Chelsea said she cooked dinner for the family. But when it was time to sleep, the battered Isabella couldn't sleep peacefully and kept crying. Keep in mind, at this point, Isabella was already covered in injuries. A week earlier, her wrists had been beaten to fracture. Moreover, during the day, Isabella had been beaten again by the furious Scott for bathroom issues, kicked to fracture her pelvis. Her whole body pain made it impossible for Isabella to sleep. But Scott didn't care. According to Chelsea's later account, Scott then grabbed his own shoe and repeatedly beat Isabella with the sole. After the beating, Chelsea noticed that Isabella seemed to have difficulty breathing. The little girl opened her mouth, seeming to want to say something to Mom, but her lips moved a few times without making a sound. Then Chelsea said she and Scott panicked and quickly performed CPR on Isabella, but it had no effect. Chelsea's lawyer stated that her client admitted she knew what her child had gone through, knew she had been beaten and abused by Scott all along. She also admitted that as a mother, she had always stood by and done nothing, said nothing. But before Chelsea's lawyer could finish, in court, Scott's lawyer Christopher stood up to refute. He described Chelsea as a sinister and cunning woman, saying there was no evidence that the child's injuries were caused by Scott. And he claimed that Scott discovered injuries on Isabella 5 days before her death. He even asked Chelsea what happened. According to Scott's account, Chelsea acted indifferently at the time, saying, "I don't know, don't worry about it." And on June 26th, the day Isabella died, Scott said the child was completely normal. But the next day, June 27th, he said when he woke up in the morning, he found Isabella limp all over, no breathing. He admitted he didn't contact the police or ambulance services. He said although he knew at some point we had to do that, we didn't because we were in denial about what happened. So the couple who were lovey-dovey in the pub before, now in court became enemies, mutually accusing each other of being the murderer who killed Isabella. The prosecutor stated in court that the murderer who killed Isabella was Scott. He was full of lies, brutal and cunning. On the morning of June 26th, the day Isabella died, Scott had searched on his phone, "What happens when my child is breathing but unresponsive?" And when Isabella passed away that night at 11:37 p.m., what did this self-proclaimed Father Scott do? Surveillance shows that just half an hour after Isabella's death, at 12:07 a.m., Chelsea playfully pushed the stroller with Isabella, whom they knew was dead, out the door in the middle of the night. The two pushed the child's body together to the nearby Apple Green gas station and bought a bottle of lemon soda inside. All of this was to create the illusion that Isabella was still alive. A day later, June 27th, starting from 11:15 p.m., Scott had been searching on his phone for information about escaping. At 11:15, he searched for flight prices to Scotland. At 11:19, he searched for trains to Amsterdam. 11:20, do you need a passport to go to Amsterdam? Do you need a passport to take the train from London to Amsterdam? At 11:23, cheapest flights in the UK. Perhaps realizing he was too poor to afford tickets, the next day he simply decided not to go. For the second time, he pushed the already deceased Isabella out the door, heading straight to the nearby Royal pub. While walking on the road, Scott, I don't know if he was high or what, was dancing around. Another day passed to June 29. At this point, Isabella had been dead for 3 days. At 11:40 a.m., this perverted couple pushed Isabella out the door for the third time. They went together to Ipswich city center, browsed several secondhand stores, and finally bought a secondhand Xbox controller at CEX. On the bus, someone saw them place the shopping bag with the controller right on the stroller, on top of the blanket covering Isabella. When getting off, these two bastards even waved to the driver. How twisted their minds must be. And on June 30th, the day before Scott was arrested, his phone search history also showed Ipswich taxi, trains from Ipswich, CX cash converters, trains from Ipswich to Southend-on-Sea. Anyway, to make the act complete, over the next 3 days, Scott and Chelsea kept pretending, pushing the child's body to multiple places. This pair of like-minded lovers had long investigated and prepared where to escape next.
And on Chelsea's side, when she witnessed the entire process of her daughter being beaten to death by Scott, she never stood up to stop it. In court, when asked about this, Chelsea said she thought it was just a phase. She felt Scott's anger was only temporary, thinking that once the toilet training phase passed, Scott wouldn't beat the child anymore and everything would be fine. She also explained that sometimes she heard voices in her head. She said these different voices told her not to seek help, not to do that. Although this sounds like Chelsea had mental health-related issues, before the trial, Chelsea passed psychological tests and showed no mental problems. Finally, after a long 7-week trial, the jury unanimously found Scott Jeff guilty of murder. The judge sentenced him to life imprisonment with a minimum of 26 years before parole eligibility.
The jury found the mother Chelsea not guilty of murder. Since Chelsea had pleaded guilty to the other 3 charges before the trial, including causing or allowing the death of the child abuse related to cocaine, and child abuse related to marijuana, Chelsea was ultimately sentenced to only 10 years in prison. After the verdict, the public was in an uproar, with the vast majority believing that UK law was too lenient on criminals, this sentence too light. After receiving a large number of complaints, Deputy Chief Constable Lucy Rigby has requested the Court of Appeal to re-examine Chelsea's sentence. But, regarding Scott's sentence, the Court of Appeal refused to hear it, believing there was no major error in his sentence. As for whether Chelsea's sentence will be increased later, it's still unknown for now. Conclusion and reflections. Looking back at this Isabella case, it really makes people angry and heartbroken. Scott, needless to say, drug addict, domestic abuser, child abuser, he's scum to the extreme, hopeless garbage. If he really gets paroled after 26 years, he'll just be 50 years old, with half his life left to live. But Isabella's young life only lasted 2 years and 9 months. It's really too unfair. On the other hand, it can be said that Isabella's tragedy was single-handedly caused by her mother, Chelsea. If she hadn't been brainwashed into loving a drug-addicted, rotten person like Scott, perhaps Isabella wouldn't have been beaten to death by him. Even if she fell in love with this person she shouldn't have, actually, as the mother, she had plenty of time and opportunities to get Isabella out of the dangerous situation. On the beach, the female officer had repeatedly asked her if she needed help. At that time, Isabella had already been beaten and abused multiple times by Scott. The reason she was wearing long sleeves, long pants, and a thick jacket was to prevent others from seeing. As a mother, if she really cared about her daughter, if she really put the child's health and safety in her heart, she should have told the officer then that her boyfriend Scott was scum, a beast who punched and kicked the child. She should have told the officer that we need help, hope to escape Scott. We, mother and daughter, need a safe place to stay. But she didn't do that. On the contrary, she told the officer that she wanted to live with Scott, with this scumbag who repeatedly beat and abused her own daughter. From that moment, she had actually lost her qualification as a mother. In her eyes, her lover, her banned substances, her own happiness were more important than anything, and her own child was just a burden.
So for this case, what do you think about Chelsea and Scott? Welcome to leave a message in the comment section below to share your views.
As usual, everyone remember to take care of yourselves. Love you all. See you next time.